Welcome to the Docpreneur Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Tatro, editor-in-chief of Concierge Medicine Today. And this is the podcast, the show where physicians come to learn, build, and lead and follow their entrepreneurial tendencies, where we go beyond the clinical practice walls of where you're at today and into some really deep and real conversations with other physicians and healthcare leaders about what it takes to build a sustainable, relationship-driven practice that actually serves your patients and your life. Today's episode is one I have genuinely loved over the years, and I look forward to all the time, every year, because our guest physician is not only a doctor, she's an author, she's a speaker, and to say it plainly, she's a friend and one of the most thoughtful voices in medicine today when it comes to the entrepreneurial physician experience, the business of medicine, and what it actually takes to lead with both excellence and humanity. We are going to cover a lot today with my guest, Dr. Una.
Please note, the information shared on this podcast and across all CMT platforms is intended for general informational purposes only and may contain errors or omissions. Nothing in this podcast nor across CMT platforms constitutes medical, financial, legal, nor professional advice, and CMT is not liable for any inaccuracies. CMT encourages listeners to conduct their own research and consult trusted advisors before taking any action based on the content presented. No mention, interview, or link should be considered an endorsement. This content is primarily intended for a healthcare audience and may not apply to all listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, good morning or good evening, Docpreneur Nation. You're listening to Concierge Medicine Today's Docpreneur Leadership Podcast. And today, there are guests that we have once, and then there are guests that we have twice, and then there are guests we have 3 and 4 and 5 times. And today, Dr. Una is returning, and I look forward to our conversations. And I actually recall things and sound bites that you say from the previous time that you were on. I was just quoting it a couple of weeks ago. I was like, look, this is a playground with a fence. You know, you probably remember saying that a couple of years ago. You said it so many times you forget, but you have so many good things to share for so many physicians out there, and you have helped hundreds, if not many hundreds or thousands of doctors out there build businesses. And she has a new uh, she's the author of another new book, The Seven-Figure Physician CEO. She is the founder of the Entree Business School. She's the CEO of Ivy League Pediatrics, a board-certified pediatrician, a mom, all these other wonderful things. So thank you, of course, for being our guest today on this little thing we call a podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, and not little at all. You are changing lives and making things better for physicians, and we need all the help we can get. So we
Well,
appreciate you and everything you do.
Well, thank you. Today I want to cover, I have a lot of questions, and, sometimes there are only a few physicians I bring on that I'm really intimidated by, and I want to make sure like I've got my questions ready so that I don't look unprepared. And this is one of those that's like, I find that the questions are better when, of course, you do prepare, but sometimes you can just riff and it's still a good conversation. But this conversation, I think, today is for every doctor who got into medicine because they love it. And somewhere along the line, the way they started, the way started to wander in the life of that they imagined was not necessarily possible anymore. And Dr. Una is here to tell you that it is possible. And because Dr. Una is proof of what you're the proof of the pudding. Like you've done this, you've done the hard stuff, and you're going to do hard stuff again. And you didn't sign up for easy when you became a doctor. You signed up for worthwhile. And I think we all can often forget that, but you still have to be around. As Dr. Kim said years ago, a concierge doctor in North Carolina, incredible benevolent physician. He said, if I want to stay in business to help people, I have to know about business. So that's what we're here to talk about. So Dr. Una, tell us a little bit about you before they jump in case they aren't familiar with you and what Entree MD is doing and what your passion is.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. Like you said, I'm Dr. Una. I'm a lot of things. But at this point, I think I'll say I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a homeschooling mom. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary, my husband and I. So we've been married for 20 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And really at this point in my career, I am on a mission to help doctors and to help doctors learn how to build profitable multiple seven-figure businesses so they have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on their terms. I'm a firm believer that we are just one set of business skills away from the career that we did dream of, right? The impacts we dreamed of having and all of those things. I just think, without the business skills, it's just hard because nobody's setting the stage for us to do that. So that's what I'm dedicated to doing. I do that through books and podcasts and workshops and Entrepreneur Business School and all of that. But I have my company. We have one mission, and that is to support doctors. So we did not get a business education, but we can now. So yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what EntreMD does. I reference it all the time. I send as many doctors as I can to it. In fact, I think I've got one of your books. There it is. It's under the Secrets of Longevity back there. On my beneath the lamp there, I've got your EntreMD book. And I will go to Amazon and buy different books within that stack and say, this is the one you got to read today, and it's their nightstand homework, or they'll get it on Audible or their Kindle. But you've written several books. Tell us about why you wrote those books and what EntreMD is doing.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sending those and getting copies. I truly appreciate it. So EntreMD is a company that we started 7 years ago at this point. And the starting point of it was in 2016. I just had this awareness, this knowing, if you will, that medicine as we know it is gone. If all you know how to do is take care of patients and you don't understand the other aspects of it, you would be out of luck. Now, this was 10 years ago. So at that point, it was like, what are you talking about? But now it's pretty obvious, and all of that. And so that put me on this journey where I said, okay, well, what else can I do? How else can I retool myself? And I started learning to speak. I started learning to write. I started learning to be the CEO of my practice as opposed to the lead pediatrician in my practice. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I understand that this is going to be bad if I don't figure this out, but there's a million physicians. It's not just me. And by the time I figure it all out and it becomes obvious, it'll be too late. This is the time. And that's kind of when EntreMD was born. And the mission of EntreMD was very simple from the beginning, to help 100,000 physicians. And we picked 100,000 because I studied movements, and it says if you're able to impact 10% of a community, you can shift the culture of the community. So in the physician community, we have a culture where, burnout is mainstream, loss of autonomy is mainstream, private practices going out of business is normal. We don't know business, we don't know finances, and all of those kind of things. I was like, what if we rewrite it? Where the new thing is that we can build these dream businesses. And when I say dream business, I mean a business that has a lot of impact. It helps a lot of people. And we administer it in a way that we know is right. We're not controlled by anybody to do it a certain way. And then we can build our dream lives. Again, it doesn't mean the Lamborghini and all of that. It means whatever it is you want. Like, for instance, I wanted to homeschool my kids, and I have built my career in such a way that I have the freedom to do that. So that's part of my dream life, right? And so, where the narrative is now dream business, dream life, and every physician has access to it. Because I think it takes a very special person to give up their youth, if you will, go to medical school and all this training for over a decade and take multiple six figures in debt to have the right to help people. It takes a special person to do that. I don't think it's too much to ask that that person can then practice what they went to go learn and then build a life doing that, right? Like, it's a lot of an investment, and every investment deserves a return on investment. So we're here to rewrite that narrative completely, have enough people experience it that it just cannot be unseen, where everybody's like, okay, there is another way, there is an alternate reality, and I'm going to choose that. And so fast forward a few years after that, I started thinking, okay, I have clients that I work with directly, but there's a million physicians. And then, like, I have a podcast, I have all this. What else could I do to give people a body of work so you can read a chapter, then do the chapter, read another chapter, and do the chapter, and your life and your business is changing in real time. And so that's when I started writing, and then started with the EntreMD method that you talked about. And I started with that book, and then wrote the visibility formula, the profitable private practice playbook, and then now the seven-figure physician CEO, and it's all with one intent, to help doctors thrive as entrepreneurs and live life on their terms. I'm a big believer we can have it all, but the
Yeah.
rules for having it all, there are rules for that. We just have to play by the rules, but we can. Yeah.
Yeah. I, you know, I, I think I've said this before in other interviews, so it's a repeat, but from my seat on the bus, this is one of the most amazing, such a giving group of individuals, like doctors in general. Like there's always a couple out there, but they're not the majority. But for the most part, every physician's so caring, so generous. Um, and there's no community out there like it. And so when you think, I love what you said about the 10% of a community you can change. How are you meeting? You feel like you've met that goal? You're meeting the goal. There's still room. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. There will be till the day we both die, but and the work won't be done, and hopefully it will live on. But, how do you feel like how do you feel like that goal is coming along? Because now there's probably other people who are coming along to push your boulder up the mountain, and you go and help them push their boulders, and, it's a push and pull kind of relationship out there. But how's that goal coming along?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start from the impact and then go through the numbers. So in the beginning, it was like, what in the world is Dr. Una talking about? Like, this is French. We don't understand anything that she's saying. And so people will somebody will build a six-figure business here. Somebody will, take their multiple six-figure business to seven figures. And they're like, oh my goodness, I could take 3 weeks off and I could do all of those things. So it started seeing those results and like, oh, we don't know what she's saying, but do what she says, right? Like, so that started happening. And then fast forward to today, we are now seeing, so for instance, with the group that I work with, we are seeing where seven figures is becoming normal. Nobody's looking at me like, what is she what is she talking
Yeah,
about? It's like apparently we can do this. We need to learn it. We need to play by different rules. We need to stop running away from marketing. And so to see people go from employed physician to a multiple seven-figure practice. And it's not all about the money, right? But the thing is that to do that, you have to help a lot of people, right? So it's the impact, right? To go
mhm,
from that and then to go to change policies at a national level, to be on the biggest stages, biggest podcasts. We had a number of doctors, 3 doctors actually, who are on the regionals list of fastest growing companies in their region in the US and things like that. Like all this does is it paints a picture like, huh, I was thinking I was stuck. Maybe I'm not. If they could do that, right? Like, because that's the idea is you can see it and you're like, wait. And the most fun thing about it is they're not doing it at the expense of their lives.
mhm.
You would see somebody take a practice to seven figures and they took 8 weeks off. Like typically those two things don't go together, but they're
Yeah.
doing it, right? We had a doc who came on, I was interviewing her, and she's like, oh my goodness, my business has grown by 61% compared to last year. And she was saying all these things, and these are facts, they're just numbers. Then she starts crying on the interview because she's like, that's not the biggest win. She starts crying. And I let her cry. And then when she's done, she says, I'm a better parent. I have more time for my kids. My marriage is better. We have a bathroom we've been meaning to remodel for 6 years. We're doing that. And I took 7 weeks off. Boohoo
Oh,
crying. Because that's what, right? Like, so that's the dream business and the dream life, if you will. So she's having the impact she wants to have with her patients, but she also has a life like we can have both. And so to get to that point, and then their friends are watching them and their colleagues are watching them and all of that. So people are going like, huh, I guess something else is possible. Right.
yeah.
And that is huge because the numbers don't lie, the stories don't lie. And now there are hundreds of stories like that. Right. So that's a lot of fun to see. Directly through our workshops and our books and all of that, we've hit like tens of thousands at this point of people individually. So the ripple effect, I have no idea what that is like. But yeah, so directly we haven't quite hit the 100,000, but we are on our way, and Dr. Una is happy about that. And
Oh,
yes, I
that
talked
is
about myself in
awesome.
third person.
Yeah. Well, you've earned that right. Um, well, let's talk about the identity shift. Your new book centers on the physician CEO, not just as a title, but as a whole new identity for doctors. And for a doctor who has spent their entire career being defined by that clinical role, what does that shift actually feel like? Not necessarily look like on a day to day, but feel like, and what makes it so hard?
Well, I'll start with the second question. I think what makes it so hard is that we bought into this lie that because we are smart and we learned a lot of things and we have great bedside manner, our patients like us, we can build thriving practices, right? Like so, our clinical training ports over to the business world, and it doesn't. Now, it does give us some advantages. Like, for instance, you went through medical school, chances are you have a very strong work ethic. You went through medical school, chances are you put people before profit. So there are things that you have, but it doesn't translate to a successful practice. So what I say is that no physician has ever built a thriving practice. It is physician entrepreneurs that build thriving practices. And so because we think we can port it over, we assume we don't need to do anything. And so that makes it painful for a really long time till we figure out, no, and there's me, the clinician, and there's me, the CEO, or me, the entrepreneur, and I need to be trained both ways and show up both ways, right? I have both hats. So the version of me who takes care of the hypertension and the version of me that's looking at the profit and loss statement, those are two people,
Yeah.
right? They're two different identities. And so once we recognize that, okay, I will take very good care of my patients as a clinician, but I also need to take very good care of my business as the entrepreneur. Once we realize that, then we can start building practices that help a lot of people have profound impact while also creating financial freedom for us. And some may say, well, I don't want the financial freedom. It's not about me. But this is the thing. If we don't take care of the business and the business goes away, we have to stop doing the clinical stuff. And so for me, I see it as my moral and ethical obligation as a good clinician to run a thriving practice so I can continue to take care of my patients, right? Like this is
Yeah.
my obligation. So I think that's what makes it so hard. We think we don't have to do it. I thought that too. I was like, I'm gonna start a practice, my patients love me and all this stuff. I'm gonna hang the shingle and they will come. And I hung the shingle and they didn't come. So I
Yep.
had to figure out some other things to then make the practice work. And this was, 16 years ago, but still. So I think that's the first thing. As far as how the identity feels, I think that and nobody's ever asked me. I think asked me that. This is a really good question because even though being an entrepreneur is work, it feels like freedom. It
Mhm.
feels like full autonomy. It feels like I'm the designer of my fate. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If I'm in a system, I do what I'm told, I function within the parameters and all of that. As a CEO, I can define what my revenue goal is. I can define the patients I want to work with. I can define how much work I want to do. Do I want to work 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week? Right. And when I define that, I can reverse engineer it to say, these are the things that I need to do to pull this off, right? And I can pull it off. I can define, like, I'm in control. I'm designing what I want things to look like. And after designing it, I'm very clear, this is the price to pay. So I don't do things like say I don't market because CEOs don't say that. That's not the thing they say. I do what is required because I want the business and the life I've decided I want. Like it just
Mhm.
puts you in the driver's seat. And whatever goals you set, you can pull it off because you know what to do,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's
You know
like
what
they
to
say the first million is the hardest because you've had to stumble and you've spent more money in more areas that you would like to admit that feel like, well, I failed. And I don't remember who it was. I was listening to another author I think it was yesterday. I want to fail fast so that I can keep, you know, learn, move on, and let's default to some action and keep the ball moving forward. And I like what we're talking about designing that. Uh, and I think we've come a long way. At least I have observed this among the physician entrepreneurial community in the circles that I think we're both kind of in. Is revenue is not a bad word anymore. They've started to understand that it unlocks resources. And going back to this is an amazing group of individuals wherever they're peppered, across the country or the globe. They are not spending it on those resources, that revenue, on themselves. They're giving it to others. They're taking care. They know that by employing, so and so, I'm providing for that family. They're going to college because of this job. And if I can keep that employee happy and staying and doing and motivated, we can keep doing and impacting that. So the ripple effects are quite large. So let's talk a little bit about the joy factor. um this year, the word meaningful and the word joy has really come across my desk in a lot of conversations, and in it for the joy, I think, is exactly what you're building toward and how you're helping doctors. And side note, I don't think, this is part of your training. This is like you have to deal with emotional individuals, but I'm sure you probably get a lot more emotional have more emotional conversations than I do. And I don't think I could handle the weight of the boohooers. I get a few, but not very often. But like, they're seeing some dynamic change in the world that you're assisting them in. And can you talk a little bit about what you see happen when a physician finally reconnects with their why when they went into medicine? Because it's like rediscovering that, oh, wow. Yeah, like, I forgot about this. You do have this freedom that comes with this. And what has it done for their business and some of the, success stories that you're just like, I didn't even think you could do that. Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start from where I started before, which was freedom. I mean, like, I find that a lot of stress, um, dissatisfaction, frustration comes from being out of alignment with who you think you are and what you think you should be doing and what you think you should have. And I think the more you get in line with that, the happier you are. So, for instance, for me, EntreMD has been around for 7 years. I have never worked in EntreMD. Like, I've never like, oh my goodness, I have to work. Like, that's never happened because I somewhere I feel like a catalyst or an activator, right? And so I help people become more of who they can be. And in EntreMD, I get paid to do that. Like,
Yeah.
so every podcast episode, every book, every session in the EntreMD Business School, and all of that is just fun for me because it's what I want to do with the people I want to do it with, and I'm able to pull it off and call this work. It's like fantastic, right? And so for a doctor to be able to do that, it's so much joy, even though they're working. Right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you a few examples. So we have a doc in the school, and she is so big on, menopause, right? And this is before it was a buzzword, menopause and the treatment of it and how it's so simple and how they have black box warnings on these things that shouldn't be there and all of that. And so she came to work with us. She came as an employed physician, and she's like, she wanted to start her own practice because she believes they should be taken care of a certain way. And I'm like, let's go for it. And so she starts the practice. The practice is very successful. She has the opportunity to start talking about it. She was talking about it in certain circles, or like, okay, let's go on Instagram and talk about it. She's like, I have a face for radio. She was being funny. Like, I have a face for radio. I'm like, nah, you can talk about it. Right. As she starts talking about it, she starts getting invited on the biggest stages, biggest podcasts, right? And then she starts working on this project, which is what she wanted to do, to get rid of this black box warning that had been on the medication, to working hard to get this like formal, these are the formal guidelines for taking care of this so other specialties could take care of it as well. And it's not only her, she did with a group, but they pulled it off. They pulled off both things. Like, imagine going from I'm an employed physician to now I'm changing things at a national level while building this very profitable practice. And I have other doctors working with me. So I have the time to do the speaking, do all the other things I'm doing, start launch a course, do what I do, take care of patients and all of that. And I have more time, not less time
Yeah.
for my family and
Wow.
for the things that matter to me. So clearly, this is not someone who's just sitting on the beach, right, and doing nothing, but is in full alignment with who she thinks she is, practicing medicine on her own terms, living life on her own terms, and that's joy, 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 joy. Now, of
Yeah.
course, there are challenges, right? Nobody's saying joy with no challenges. Anybody who's been alive for longer than 5 years knows there's challenges everywhere, plus joy, right?
Yeah.
Right? And you know how to handle that. And that is just like such a beautiful moment for her, and that's the way it is. We had another doctor who, she had had her practice for many years, and at this point she was just tired. She was tired, she was frustrated, and she was like, I just want private equity to come take this thing off my hands. And we connected, and on her 50th birthday, she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna join the Entrepreneur Business School. That's my 50th birthday present to myself." So she joins the school.
Wow.
And she starts learning how to design what she wants. Like, wants what you want. Like, how do you want to build a practice? She goes from I think she was working 4.5 days or 5 days a week. She goes from that to 2.5 days a week while growing the practice. They just expanded into a location that I think is twice the size of her original location. Learned how to get things done through the team, how to market, how to promote, all of those things. So now she's doing 2.5 days a week, and she's living life on her terms, traveling with her kids, doing all of those things, had her first $1 million month. That's
Wow.
is it like there's nothing costing another part of her life something, right? Like it's
Yeah.
all working, right? And so the idea is, for me, I think the price we have to pay to live life on our terms is that we need to evolve. We need to make the transition from physician to physician CEO, and then you have to play by those rules. So sometimes people will tell me things like, I want to start a practice, but I don't want to market. I want to start a practice, but I don't want to lead a team. It's not a buffet. We don't get to pick. The
Mhm.
price for life on our terms is we do what is required. My evolution from physician to physician entrepreneur is required. Building a dominant brand, that is required. Understanding how to create revenue, that is required. Understanding how to build a profitable team, meaning the more people I bring on, the more they help me serve and earn. So they're paying
Mhm.
for themselves as opposed to being the only revenue generator, which is a painful existence. That will lead to the absence of joy, right? And
Yeah.
so if I want life on those terms, I have to come and say, okay, what is required? Right? It's like
Yeah.
I didn't like, and you can't tell anybody this. I didn't like biology. I was like, I don't like this. Okay. And I don't know why you're telling me to label toads and do all this kind of weird stuff. I don't want to do it. But there was no path to medical school without biology. So I
Yeah.
did what was required. In the same way, in business, there are things that are required. And so if we could stop treating it like a buffet and go like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. If I own a private practice, I'm an entrepreneur. Okay. I need to make these transitions. Now, if I make these transitions and play my cards right, I set myself up where I can build a practice that is a vehicle that allows me to impact people the way I want to and in the number I want to. It sets me up for financial freedom, and it sets me up for time freedom. Then we have the dream business and the dream life, and every party wins, right? Your patients win, your team wins, the practice wins, you win, which is what we
Yeah.
want, right? Like if one person is not winning, then we have a parasitic relationship. We want a relationship with where all parties are winning. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember what you said, I think in our first interview, it was just a few tweaks, just a few tweaks. And that kind of gets into, what you were saying. And that first story made me tear up a little bit because that was a good, I mean, they were both good stories, but the first one was, I've seen that happen. I've seen that life change happen where it's like, this has changed my life and it changed my marriage and my family. And I got to get off that because otherwise I will tear up more. Time, freedom, and financial freedom. And I think that that has to do with what you're saying related to mindset too, because there is this mindset of like, well, I don't want to market. That feels dirty, ugly. And I shouldn't have to because I went and did all this school and they should just know me by my CV and go to my About Us page. but that's the page that we focus on the most as web designers, as entrepreneurs, like, all right, this should do it. I think everything is there. And nobody goes, like, you look at the web analytics, nobody's looking at that page. They're looking at things much more differently now. Um, but time freedom and financial freedom, are they both really possible? You've worked with, a lot of physicians now over the years. And for the doctor who's listening, who says, I just want my life back, but I know that's possible. And I know that you're saying that this is possible. And it sounds like there are, and I've heard about other doctors. I even know a few, but not many, that made that possible with 7 figures, or heck, I just want 6, and I want a solid 6. It just doesn't always have to fluctuate all the time. It's possible for them, but it's not possible for me. And what does that path to both freedom and financial freedom actually look like, and where can they start?
I think a good starting point would be getting to the point where they know that it's possible for them. And, you know, I'll put it this way. When I talk to physicians, I tell them, You are unbelievably amazing." And I don't say it because I'm a physician, but if you think about it, there are what, 335 million or so odd people in the United States. A million of them are physicians, which means if there
Mhm,
was an even spread for every 335 people, there'll be one physician,
mhm,
right? The acceptance rate into medical school runs anywhere from 1 to 3%. They're one of the 1 to 3%, right? When a physician goes to run a code and like, oh yeah, we ran a code, the patient is in the ICU now, it's touch and go, but we think he should be okay. That's literally like raising someone from the dead. And I'm not trying to make physicians seem bigger than they are. I'm just trying to say there's so many things that are impossible you already do. Right? You think about someone who's a heart surgeon. I mean, this was a pimply teenager who stood up and told the family, like, you know what I'm going to do for a living? I'm going to crack open hearts. I'm going to bring the heart out. I'm going to work on it and put it back in. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And you pulled it off.
mhm,
Like physicians are amazing. But we've been in a system that has told us you're a one trick pony. You don't know anything about business. Stay in your lane. Do it, just do what you're told to do for so long that we've forgotten. And we're around ourselves so much, right? So when unicorns are around unicorns, they don't feel like unicorns, right? So
mhm,
we've been around ourselves so much that we've forgotten. If you went through the process, you're amazing. And if you could go from human to physician, you can go from physician to physician CEO. It's actually easier. It actually is. But then we have to open ourselves up to the possibility that this is true. And this is the reason why I love telling story after story after story after story. Now, if somebody comes and the person went to school and they had good grades and all that stuff, and they try to convince the doctor they can't go to medical school, they'll probably argue with them. Like, you will be taught what to do. You will be taught the algorithms. You will, like, you can get this. It's the same thing with entrepreneurship. So it's embracing this thing that I can do it. I think the second thing is realizing that we've bought a lot of lies very deeply, and we
mhm,
have to unearth those. For instance, oh, well, if I'm good enough, people will come. Okay, the iPhone is good enough. They still have to market,
mhm.
right? Coca-Cola has been
Yeah.
there forever and probably not a really great example, but again, they
They're
still
still
have to
advertising.
market.
Yeah.
Amazon is a $1 trillion company. They still have to market. Like, so it is an extreme level of almost pride to say, oh, I don't need to market. Like, of course we do need to market, but we've been sold that because of the way we were treated in the healthcare system. So what does a doctor do? A doctor, gets in their car, gets to work, parks in the parking garage, grabs a coffee, goes to their office, sits down. They tell them patients already. They see the patients. They do that for a number of times, then they go home. They do this every day for 2 weeks, and then a miracle happens. They go
Yeah.
to their bank account, and there's money there. And so we think you see patients, you get money. No, because somebody still has to collect co-pays or collect the cash, make sure that everything went out, all the bills are paid. Somebody else is out there marketing, doing PR in the community, and all of those things. So because we were exempt from all of that, we were just told stay in your lane and see the patients. We have this assumption that you can get away with marketing, and you cannot. You cannot. That's not the way it works. If a $1 trillion company is marketing, then we have to understand that we need to market. We've also believed the lie that marketing is bad, marketing is sleazy, selling is sleazy. Professionals don't do that, and I bought into that philosophy and had no patience. So I had to I had to change my mind really quickly. But I will throw this out here: marketing is not bad, and selling is not bad. Bad marketing is bad, and bad selling is bad.
Yeah.
There's good marketing, there's good selling, right? Like, for instance, I'm sure right now there's something you want that you're like, man, I wish I could just find somebody who could do XYZ for me, and I would pay them,
Mhm.
right? And so if
Yeah.
that person comes and say, hey, I do this, you're like, ah, I've been looking for you this whole time, right? Right? And that's selling, but that's not bad. You'll be excited and you throw your money at them, right? And so there's so many lies that we've been conditioned to believe that we have to say, like, okay, I have to acknowledge that everything that I believe is not true. So let me
Yeah.
explore these things, right? And then thirdly is we have to learn skills. And we're physicians. When I started off as an entrepreneur, I was like, when I came to terms with the fact that I was an entrepreneur after I'd been in practice and nothing was working, I was like, oh my goodness, I have to market, I have to build relationships, I have to build a referral base. Like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do any of these things. And so I'm stuck. And then I remember reading Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog. And in it, he said, if you see people who are doing better in business than you, they're not better than you. They just have skills you don't have. And this was 15 years ago. I still remember like it was yesterday because I was like, wait a minute. I may not know how to market. I may not know how to sell. I may break out in hives when I think about a profit and loss statement, but I'll tell you what I know how to do. I know how to learn.
Yeah.
I know how to acquire skills. I'm good at that because med school and residency, we had to do a lot of that. I know how to do that. And if we have that mentality, we can just learn the skills that are required for our dream business and our dream life. And they're not that many. But the sooner we get out of the resistance, the sooner we get out of the disbelief, and the sooner we start building those skills and putting in the reps, the faster that life will show up. I'll give you an example. I have a surgeon. She runs a cash pay practice, so a concierge practice, if you will. And yesterday, she was like, "Okay, Dr. Una, now I've listened to you. Now I'm created new problems for myself. I'm so busy, and like now I find it hard to protect my CEO time, right, and all of that." So we started talking about that. And she's like, "I have 6 cases booked next week." I'm like, "Huh?" I said, "So before we started working together, how many cases would you have booked a week on average?" She was like, "0, sometimes 1."
Wow.
Right? And this is
Yeah.
between January and now. So we're talking about 3.5 months. She has gone, so technically she's 6x her schedule, but that's because she got out of the resistance quick, right? Okay, fine. I'm gulping and like feel a little nauseous, but I'm going to do this. And she kept at it. So if this is what is happening in 3 months, what happens in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? So if we can just say, the way things have been, that's not working for me. I want a different experience. So I am going to change and I'm going to upgrade my mindset and the skills that I have. It is unbelievable the change we can create. And then it compounds, right? The people who I've worked with the longest, the question they ask me is, how can we convince people to do this long enough? Because a year is not enough. Like, you're going to get mind boggling results in a year, but it's just the tip of the iceberg if you keep going, though, right? So,
Yeah.
it's available to us. We just have to accept, okay, we need to change. We need to do things
Yeah.
differently. Once we get out of resistance, things can happen fairly quickly.
I want to go on a little bit of a rabbit trail, but off of my notes. But I think it's, with the weather here in Atlanta in particular, it's gotten a little sunnier, a little warmer, unusually warm. And so I find that one of the things my doctor keeps asking me is, on a weekly basis, are you doing the walking we talked about? Like, yeah, yeah, I'm doing the walking. Like, and so I'll get there first thing in the morning, kind of unlock my mind, take a walk around the office complex area and the buildings and the suites around us. And interestingly enough, as you study entrepreneurship, you learn about time management, how to spend your time wisely, so, all these types of things. You kind of learn like, oh, the CEO of that business, he or she must be in today. Because not to say that the fancy car is the barometer of, but that car was there at 8 a.m., but then when I went for a walk at 11, that car's no longer there. When I went back to walk again at 4 o'clock, that car's still not there. So it informs us who are entrepreneurs. He or she is doing something different with their time than anybody else, because the dentist and the other folks, their cars are still there. They haven't moved all day.
Yeah.
So it's just an observation, but it related to buying back our time and being on, spending the time to do the reps, to put in the effort, and that you do get rewarded for that, whether it's personally, mentally, emotionally, and if you're lucky, financially too.
Yeah.
So the
And I'm
physicians
glad
see you.
you brought that up because the dentist and the doctor can have that too. They
Yeah,
just have to change the rules they play by.
yeah.
They do have to change those rules. And if they can, like our default settings to do everything ourselves. If it will be, it's up to me, right? Like that's kind of the default setting of a physician. But if we can learn to do three things through teams and start seeing ourselves as not people building our job, but people building mini healthcare systems, then we can buy our time back in that way. I cannot tell you how many clients I have who work 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week, because that's what they want to do. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, and this kind of goes back to a little bit about mindset, because you do see yeah, that's possible, and I want to do all that, and that all sounds good, but it's the system around me. And it's like it's not necessarily the system around you, because you're blaming a bigger system, a bigger problem that you really, yeah. If you're like what the story you told, you go and impact something nationally, but let's just focus on the system that you have created in your practice. Like that's the system that you can impact. That's the system that you're maybe trying to to scapegoat, to say, well, that's the problem, but you're not willing to do anything to fix it. So talk to us a little bit about we talked a little off air about us, building the foundation for, it's like, well, I'm just happy for 6 figures. Just give me a consistent number of that. But yet we need to build a foundation to hit that 7, or it's going to cost us more in the end. So what do I need to unlearn as a physician, that is like, okay, I believe this. I am going to jump in both feet, and I'm in. I'm gonna set some big audacious goals.
Yeah, and there is a concept. I actually recorded this on my podcast today, which is your goal is like a tool, for one of a better word, right? It just kind of points you in the right direction. I say this because sometimes people are afraid of setting goals. In fact, most physicians do not set goals. Most of the ones I've spoken to over the last 7 years, because it's like, well, if I don't hit it, then I'm going to feel bad, and and all of this stuff, and it's baggage, and I'll feel stressed out. And I'm like, well, how about we put that in front of us, because it will immediately make you behave differently today. You
It's
know
like
what I mean?
spending cash versus spending your cards, right? Like I'm a little more cautious when I give cash, and my daughter's like,
Exactly.
"Man,
Exactly.
cash versus credit is crazy." So,
Right? So it makes you behave differently. It makes you behave like somebody who would accomplish that. So first I'll say own the goal, right? And somebody may say, okay, Dr. Uno, I don't, like I just want 6 figures. I don't want 7 figures. My job as somebody who has been down this path is to guide people in such a way that when you get to 6 figures and you're like, shoot, I think I'll actually like 7 figures, you would have built in such a way that there is capacity for expansion, right? So we are talking about this off air where I said, if I wanted to build a house and I decided I wanted to be build a building, I would decide, a 5 floors, 7 floors. I'm not quite sure how many floors I want. In building the foundation, if I build it to handle 5 floors, I can't make it 7 floors, right? But
mhm.
if I build it so the foundation can handle 7 floors, if I build five and decide later, like I want to add another floor, I can, because I built the foundation that way. So I will never lead somebody to build a practice in such a way that it cannot expand. And when you get to 6 figures, you'll realize 6 figures, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or crazy or anything like that. 6 figures is Not a whole lot, right? So let's play the numbers. If you have six-figure practice and your overhead is 30%, which is low, you're left with 70, right? And then you haven't paid taxes. After you pay taxes, then you're left with that. If that's all you brought in, then it's like maybe a job is better. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
it's so little. And so because I know that, I'm like, okay, how do we build it such that it's a foundation that you can take this to seven figures, you can take this to multiple seven figures. So I always teach strategies that will work if you're going to build it that far, so that from the beginning you're building it right. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's just the idea. Um, so that's the way that we need to build it. And again, as far as what needs to happen, um we need to evolve, and we need to start doing things differently. We need to embrace marketing. We need to embrace doing things through a team. I cannot tell you how many people will be like, oh, by the time it will take me to explain this thing to this person, I would have done it many times over myself. I was like, well, let's do the math here. So if you are building, you want to take your practice to 1 million, that means you need to show up like the CEO of $1 million company today to build that. Okay. And if you're doing 1 million, then your hourly rate is whatever your revenue is divided by 2,000. So that puts you at $500 an hour. And so I asked the person, I said, for this task, this Canva graphic that you insist on making by yourself, would you ever pay anybody $500 an hour to do it? And they're like, absolutely not. I'm like, well, you're paying the CEO of your company, you to do it,
Yeah.
when you could be doing higher level activities, building a referral base, showing up and speaking in different places, to leading your team to grow your practice, but you sacrifice that to make a graphic that somebody
Yeah.
else could make for $10.
It is a lie. It is a lie that we tell ourselves that
Yeah.
I should just keep my head down and work harder. We interviewed a bookkeeper who helps all types of specialties and practices, and she said at the end of the day, I will give them a 12-point assessment. Here are the 12 levers you should pull. You can pull two, you can pull none, you can pull all 12 if you want, in order to make your business look a bit more financially healthier or unhealthier. And I said, okay, well, before you tell me the results of this, I want to know, how many out of every 10 that you work with, how many are pulling more than three or four levers? And she's like, maybe one out of every 10 are pulling more than those levers. Otherwise, they're just putting their head down, working harder, and taking on less revenue themselves in order to, because the expenses are going up in the other areas of the business.
Mhm.
Which leads me into, and you can riff on that a bit, but I also want to move into our next question, which is, you've created an organization that's entrepreneurial focused for and towards physicians. I think I'm coming to the I think I'm lowering my expectations that we're going to have change in medical schools, because I remember I think it was Dr. McCarthy years ago. This is pre-COVID. She said, not only is it, and she was teaching at different medical schools and things. Not only is it going to take an act of Congress to change how we educate doctors, it's going to take an act of God. And then you see COVID and all the things that came out of COVID, and it's like things changed within from all over the place. It's like, wow, that we as patients have been wanting that service for 20 years, and you turned it on in 3 months. Nonetheless, I think that where the effective change and where you're coming in and your voice and your books and your education that you're providing to physicians is so relevant, so important, so needed, is uh, they're not going to get that change in medical school. They're going to continue to be, as one doctor told me, he's like, my wife was treated like she was 6 inches tall. And um, it just breaks my heart to think that somebody so influential in a family's life like mine or yours, that we're treating these people this way. And then we're saying, by the way, you need to be everything for everybody at all times and wear it like it's a badge of honor. And by the way, money is bad, being an entrepreneur is bad, marketing is bad, and owning your own practice is bad. And yet, these are the most probably one of the top 10 most influential voices in my life behind my wife and kids, which equates to about 4 or 5. So then you got like, okay, you're in the 6 to 10. Sorry, Dr. So and so, but yes, you are influential because 5 words from you carry a lot of weight. And I don't want you to go out of business or move or retire early or worse. And because you didn't know how to run a business. So it's so important. So I say all that to say, do you, in your experience, you're working with other clients, you're working with physicians, you've had a wealth of experience in other circles. We don't see it coming from the educational side. So it's going to have to come from the entrepreneurial physician side to say, like folks like yourself, to say, I'm creating a business that's going to help you create a better business. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like you, I don't think it will come from the educational side or the hospitals or the insurance companies or big pharma, any of those. I think, when I wrote the EntreMD method book and the forward, I said the cavalry is not coming. It is here. It is us. Like I truly believe that. And I'm also not um I'm not thinking that I would do all of it, right? Like when I think about the medical schools, and I've tried to reach out to residency programs and all, they don't get it. At least the ones I've
Mm.
spoken to, they don't get it at all. Like, oh yeah, to come talk to our people about charting and billing properly. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, that's like, wait, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And but this is what I do know in my mind, this is the way it plays out. I think we have 3 levels in this. I think the first is that we start creating all these examples of what is possible. I think that's the first step, and I think that's the step that will take the longest time. And so, I'm so grateful that we've started seeing that where people are like, I just had a client, she's like, "Oh, this is my 7th month anniversary of my practice." And I would use your word. She was glowing, like full of joy. I'm like, who is in private practice for 7 months and they're smiling like this? She's so excited. She's like, I built this team and they're getting it done and our schedule is full. And like, she's so full of life. She's like, my whole life has changed. So it's examples of that, right? Now, the second phase is really these examples hitting a critical mass and their stories being shared so much so that people begin to doubt that what they've accepted as the norm, they begin to doubt that is the norm. They begin to see the alternative reality, like possibly maybe this is the reality, right? And so we do that. And then I think after that, we have numbers, so we can have strength in numbers, then this whole advocacy movement starts, right? Like, because there's only so many places I have access to.
Right.
But when you have that number of people, they have amongst all of us will have access to every sector, right? Like so residency programs, fellowship programs, medical school, private practices, national organizations, all of that, like everybody can be touched. So in my mind, when I think about it, I kind of think that is the trajectory. And so that's why for me, I'm all in on how can I get them the biggest results, the most ridiculous results in the shortest amount of time, and how can I put those stories on blast? That's kind of where I live now, knowing that once we have the numbers, like everything else will have to pay attention. Like once you have activated physicians who are free, who are back in control, then everybody else has to pay attention, right? Like so in my mind, that's how it plays out.
I'm sure you've seen some. I mean, my wife is like, "You're so dramatic," and I don't know why. But it's one of those things that you do, as a natural person. Sometimes I'm a little more dramatic, and I'm trying to be better at that. But I'm sure you have seen some dramatic shifts in the way that physicians are now managing their practice from a staffing perspective, from a practice administrative perspective. I find, and again, this is where I've lowered my expectations about what I expect in healthcare, and what I actually get is usually always worse than even my lowered expectations. Is, okay, we want to change, we want things to be better, but yet there's no, like my daughter had to go to her dentist, our family dentist, for the longest time. Um, we sent her off into the wolves by herself, and I forewarned her. I was like, here's what they're going to do. Here's what they're going to try to do. Not the doctor. Doctor's great. It's a new doctor, so you let me know because I haven't actually met him yet. But here's what the practice staff is going to do to you. Here's what they're going to try to get you to do, and here's what I want you to do in response. Whether you do those things, that's up to you, but I'm just forewarning you, this is what's going to happen. And of course, that is what's happened. What I was pleasantly surprised after the visit was she said, that office manager came into the lobby. She sat down with me, offered me a seat, offered me something to drink, and then we went over how the next appointment was going to go because it was for all four wisdom teeth to be taken out
Mm.
and what this is all about, why we do these things, how the billing works, explained everything. This is a 19-year-old daughter who, is learning to navigate the healthcare system a little bit by herself from somebody who's constantly annoyed by healthcare, you know. And so I'm sure you've seen some dramatic shifts in the practice administrative side. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of come in for a landing.
Yeah, so I've seen both ends. So for some people it's like, the system is what it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. And post COVID, with the cost of everything going up, there are people who have pared down their teams so much so that is the doctor doing everything, which is painful to see, right? And then all the way to the other end of it, where you have people who've decided to design what they want, design the practice on their terms. And for some of them, like, yeah, what I want to do, we can't do that and do insurance at the same time. So I'm going to build the level of care that I think people should get, and I'm going to charge you appropriately for it. And they've been able to build a kind of again, I like looking at practices as mini healthcare systems, and so to build the healthcare systems that people would deserve, where people can take the time to explain to you, and people can take the time to actually find out what's going on with you. And so it's very varied. What you see just depends on the way the person is responding to what we know as healthcare now. So it's
Yeah.
been interesting.
I hope that I know you don't want to write a next book, just like I don't want to write another book, but I think there's other books inside of us that we keep saying, I'm not writing another book. And then you go and you write two more. And, but I hope that you'll consider maybe writing another book, but it's focused on how AI is changing the game of healthcare. I was telling you earlier that I was annoyed by the scare tactic headlines being promoted by physicians out there on the internet. And, I wrote a white paper in response, and I'll leave you with this because I think that it's going to impact yours if you haven't already seen, how your physician organizations and clients are impacting and using it in good ways and not so great ways. And patients are not embracing AI because they want less humanity in their healthcare. They are using AI precisely because they want more of it. And the current system is consistently delivering it, and they want their physician to be present, focused, and genuinely engaged. So they are turning to AI for the information layer so that when they do see their physician, that the time can become more human, not less. And so have you seen any of that early signs of this? Because, a couple of years ago, it was raise your hands if you're using it at medical conferences. Raise your hand if you're familiar with it, using it. And it was like two or three came up. And then this last October, it was like, how many are using? Two-thirds of them came up. Still reluctant skepticism. However, you know, the error rate is there too. We're all humans. We all make mistakes and we all have flaws. So there's an error rate with practitioners too. But what are you seeing related to the AI use, its adaption mindset? Are you seeing two camps? Like, no, not that thing's a fad, like the internet. I don't even use the internet. Like, what are you seeing out there with AI adaption in your practices with entrepreneurial physicians?
Yeah, so there are three camps that I see. So the first camp would be the people who are not adopting it, like kind of pretending it's not there. And I'm kind of concerned for them because, like, it is. There's some things that, like, it's like gravity. There's no point arguing about it. It just is. Right? So whether you think it should be, it shouldn't be, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It is. And so
Yeah.
AI is kind of like that. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And for persons like, I don't use the internet, that's what they think. Of course they're using the internet, like whether they like it or not. The internet is just embedded in everything that we do. And so there's that camp. And yeah, we hope they get it together. Now the second camp is the camp that uses, well, let me backtrack a little bit. I think AI gives, it's the greatest opportunity and the greatest distraction of our time.
Mm.
So it's both, depending on how you use it, right? And so camp two is the camp that's really into AI, but it's a distraction, right? They're acting like they're trying to get a degree in AI. So every tool, watching every video, doing all of that, so much so their businesses are suffering.
Mhm.
I have watched people blow up their businesses because they're all in on AI, and they've left, they've forgotten that they have a machine they're running, and they're not putting any inputs in their machine. They're just interested in AI.
Mhm.
Then they have the other group, the third group, which is the group that does what I call the profitable use of AI, which means they have a vision, they have a target, and they're now looking for how to use AI to leverage AI. So they're not being used by AI, they're using AI, then leveraging AI to get there faster, cheaper, bigger, better, right? So they're like, how could I do this faster with AI? How can I do this cheaper with AI? How can I embrace capabilities I didn't have before? Because now with AI, I have that, right? Like, so for instance, for me, I'm not a data analyst kind of person. Like, that's just not my jam, right? But I run a business and I have a lot of data that I've collected, either on events or surveys that we've done and all of that. But I've never been able to crunch the data so much so that I was like, man, do I need to hire an analyst? Is this what I need to do? Because I need these numbers. Well, with Claude, I have that, right? And so
Yep.
I literally was able to take the surveys that people filled in last year in the Entree Business School to say what is the progress they've made over the year. And it was so wild to read the data, right? It's like, okay, amongst the people who filled out the survey, their revenue grew by 24.8 million or something like that. 35% of the people crossed the $500,000 mark that year. 21% crossed the seven-figure mark, 10% crossed the multiple seven-figure mark, right? And for the people who are doing higher revenue levels, there were also the people who took more time off, with 9% of the school taking off more than 3 months. Like, now all this stuff, I didn't have the capability, but now because I have AI, now I have the capability, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I have an analyst, right? I have a copywriter. I have all these things that I can add on, but I'm going where I was going. As
Yep.
opposed to, oh, I just ask AI questions like, what do you think I should do about this? I'm like, man, you're the visionary.
Yep.
Stop it. So so it's no AI on profitable use of AI, profitable use of AI. Those are the camps that I see. With people I work with, like with every concept I teach them now. I'm like, okay, this is this, and this is why you want to do it for your business is a great foundation. Then I come back, I'm like, this is how you do it in the leveraged way, using AI
Mhm.
to accomplish this. So it's not random. It's not. It's part of the ecosystem that is our business, not like just randomly learning all the tools and going down rabbit holes. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a couple of years ago, we were asked, teach me how to be a better speaker when I go to medical lecture conferences. And it was the first thing was something I learned was you're not trying to fill that 45 minutes or that hour. If you're lucky enough to get an hour, you're trying to leverage that hour. And so, when I bet the first, as an entrepreneur to entrepreneur, I bet when you see that data and you see that infographic start to form, you're thinking, holy moly, this is a good first slide. Like, this is total marketing fodder. This is so amazing. This sells itself. It's so golden. And you didn't have that before. You would have taken $500 an hour to pay somebody to not give you something as pretty and just give you, bullet points. And there was no imaging around it and all these things. Well, as we come in for a landing with Dr. Una, or the author of a new book, The Seven-Figure Physician CEO, um, what do you want a doctor to walk away with? We'll put the links in the show notes of how to get the book. What do you want doctor to walk away with from this book, knowing that they didn't know before they picked it up?
Man, so how about this? I don't actually want them to know. I want them to change.
Yeah.
Literally, that's the way the book is written, right? So the framework is, we started with the mindset piece, right? Where like these are the top 6 lies that physicians believe, and these are the evidence that this is not true. And so at the end of that chapter, I would love a mindset shift where you're like, whoa. And so every time those lies start to come up, you recognize and catch and say, no, 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 we don't think like that. I'm a physician CEO now. Right. And then we go into the math of business. I'm sure you've seen this where, or maybe haven't, somebody will tell me, oh, I want everybody to have access to great care. And, so I want them to have hour-long visits and all of these things. That's what I think people deserve. I'm like, wonderful. And but I also want everybody to be able to afford it. And so I'm gonna charge like $60 for it and stuff like that.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, the math has to math.
Mhm.
Business is an economic sport, right? Like the math has to work. So if you go low ticket, I'm okay with it, but you got to go high volume. Like you don't get to choose all the numbers. You only get to choose one, right? And so and so and that deception has kept people have started practices, tried, knocked their heads against the wall for 5 years, couldn't pull it off, and then shut it down just because they didn't understand that. So they won't understand that, right? And then we have 7-figure moves. Like the people who are 7-figure CEOs, these are the things they do. And after that chapter, I'd love to hear that someone send me a DM like, oh my goodness, I did this, I did this, I did that. So really, I want them to read a chapter, do the chapter, read a chapter, do the chapter, read a chapter, do the chapter. So at the end of it, and this is an audiobook, so I guess listen to the chapter, right? So, but at the end of it, the version of them at the end of the book is different from the version of them at the beginning of the book. Now that happens, then my job is done.
Yeah.
So it's not
It's
so much the knowing and the learning as it is the learning to do. That's why the magic.
I love that. And as a I don't you and I are both kind of we've talked a little bit about it, but we're both kind of faith-filled people. And I guess I pray for this audience, every day, multiple couple times a day. And it's like if we can just impact mindset and
Yes.
say to the physicians out there, say to the RNs, the PAs, and then maybe somebody will come along and do what we do in the way we do it, and then work on the practice administrative stuff. Like I don't think I have the energy to deal with that as another audience to say, here's how I want to change that side. Because I do feel like if we want to improve healthcare, we have to improve the practice administration side,
Yeah.
not the insurance. Like, yeah, all that stuff needs fixed, but there's other people who fix that. I want to fix the person who, you know, doesn't care that they just sent out a $427,000 bill to a mom who has a disabled husband, and her son is having spine surgery. You know, I want to impact that person, as I don't think I have the energy for that. But that's happening every day. True story, that's happening to one of my friends. Um, and that's sad. But my prayer is that we find that and we give these physicians out there who are out there trying to be entrepreneurs that you are worth more than you think you are, and you are capable of more than you think you are. And like you say, it just takes a few tweaks, just a few tweaks, and it can happen. We'll put the links to the 7-figure physician CEO. We really want you to go get this. So, if today's conversation lit anything inside of you, listeners out there, please don't let it sit. Dr. Una has built an entire ecosystem designed to help you take the next step. Or maybe this is a shareable and you're like, I already kind of do these things. In fact, I maybe already work with her, and share it with somebody, share her resources with somebody. I know that you know somebody out there who needs what she's teaching, who needs the encouragement that she's passing along to you. And so whether you're ready for the Entree MD Business School, you want a one-on-one consulting, you want just the book, the audio books, or past books to scale way past 7 figures, to build that foundation for 7, even though you're just trying to get a stable 6, you just need to start. And you can go to entremd.com. Or is there another website as well that they can go to, or is it just entremd.com?
OnTrendY.com. Yeah.
Great. That's the home base. We'll put that as well as the book in the show notes. She's had thousands of physicians already inside of this community making some real powerful moves in their practice. And I know that the physicians listening will go find your community. You'll find your people there. And there's other people just like you out there who are probably struggling in the same way. And you feel like you're on an island all by yourself out there in Texas. And I love, like what you talked about earlier, you see them celebrate their 6-month anniversary. I love seeing I love hearing the stories, particularly in concierge medicine, where it's like, "Hey, I started in October. It also happens to be the same month as your event, but I'm celebrating my 1 year or 2 year anniversary, and I'm not gonna be there." I was like, "I don't want you there. You belong where you are because that's so important because you're gonna impact so many more people." And imagine the people that you're on that top 10 list of. Your words carry so much weight with us. And so thank you, Dr. Una, for being our guest today. It has always been a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to your next book whenever it does come out. I know it's in you, and we'll be talking with you soon. But give us a couple of weeks and we'll have this up and running.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Was such a treat to have Dr. Una here as our guest again. I just love sitting down with her. And I hope that what you heard and what I heard in this conversation today, I hope that there's something that happens when you sit across from someone who has not only lived this journey, but has taken the time, the real discipline to put it into writing, to organize those hard earned lessons into something that the rest of us can actually use. Dr. Una's books are not optional reading. In fact, I give them away to doctors so often. I'm buying them off of Amazon and saying, you know what, Dr. So-and-so, you need to read this, and I'll mail it to them. They belong on your desk, in your waiting room, or on your nightstand. Go get them. We put the links in the show notes as well. Read them. We put the links to her podcast, her courses, what she's teaching. Give these things to a colleague who maybe you know that's burned out or building something new or just trying to remember why they went into medicine in the first place.